We are still waiting for camera. Okay. So welcome everybody. I'm Tomek, and I don't like long introduction. For those who know me, you know me. If for those who doesn't know me, you don't care for now. So today I would like to talk about Flutter, which nowadays is a pretty hot topic. And no wonder, like it's a really nice piece of technology. There are plenty of blog posts and presentations to make us developers excited about Flutter. Already you saw presentation from Miriam, Brian, and Dylan, and there will be even one more from Matthias. Okay, so a question to you, like who here have tried out Flutter? Okay. And who has been using Flutter in production? Okay, like in total 3 people. That is an issue because no matter how an amazing technology is, unless it's used in production, it won't survive. So today I would like to talk about how I convinced Groupon, my company, to try out Flutter. And by doing so, I will try to give you guidelines how you can do the same for your company. But first things first, this is presentation without code. So if there are any known programmers here, you should be pretty happy about that. And this is because there are already plenty of materials to make you excited about Flutter. And this presentation is about having strong arguments and being able to use them. So this is about having discussion with your team, a dialogue, to convince, so you can convince your team to Flutter. And by you, I mean somebody who is passionate about Flutter and would like to use it on a daily basis. Okay. So, but before I continue and give you like my guidelines how you can convince different team members to Flutter, probably it would be prudent for me to tell you what was the story behind Flutter at Groupon. Why we have chosen to pick it as our solution to increase the productivity. So, first, Groupon has 2 applications, mobile application. First is the customer application, which is the one that you might have been using. This is a really big application, so, and it allows you to book a table at restaurant, do manicure, and something like this. And as I said, this is a pretty big application. And the team behind it is also pretty large. The second application Groupon has is the merchant application. This application is used by the business owners. So when they set up a deal, they can track how it goes. And because there are less merchants than customers, also the merchant application is smaller, and the team behind merchant application is smaller. But being small is not always a bad thing. With a big team, if you want to try something, you need to have everybody on board. And this can take time. And small teams, agile teams, can rapidly test something, validate if it works. If it works, the teams can keep it. If it doesn't, they can scrap it. So for example, merchant application has been using Kotlin for about 2 years, and we are super happy about this. Whereas the customer application, people are now considering to use Kotlin in their source code. Furthermore, in the last couple of months, merchant applications have introduced architectural components, Firebase, we Dockerize our build system, we moved to a new build system, and also we have been trying out Flutter. But being small is not always good. In the beginning of this year, I was presented 2020 vision for the merchant application. Vision presentation should be inspiring. They should think out of the box. And this application that I saw during this presentation was amazing. I thought that every merchant would love to have it. But there was a problem. It was a bit too amazing. With our team velocity and current speed, doing this application within 2 years wasn't really possible. And like merchant deserve to have also really great experience. So something had to be done. So one solution might be to use cross-platform. So my question here, so which cross-platform is the most obvious choice nowadays? Of course, it's React Native, because it's like used for a long time. People are happy with it. Like really big amount of companies have been using it for a long time, and they are happy. Of course, there are some that are moving to native implementation because of their reasons. But and even customer team has investigated Flutter to check not Flutter, React Native to check if it's feasible. But there was an issue. There was a legal issue. According to the license, if you would have any case in court against Facebook, you would instantly lose the right to use React Native. So it was no-go for Groupon to try it out. But thankfully, there is also another cross-platform framework, which is even more awesome, according to me. I have been using this Flutter for a couple of months beforehand on my personal projects, and I really like them. So why not try it, and why not try to convince my team to use it? So the process of convincing was going really well, until one party. During that party, I met my ex-colleague, Maciek, who is really passionate about React.js and React Native. And at some point, we went to the topic of cross-platforms. And he told me that the React Native have changed its license, and it's OK to use it. And I asked him, OK, I would definitely know something about it. When did it happen? And he said, yesterday. Yeah, that was a problem. The main reason why we didn't use React Native was because of the licensing problem. And with this gone, React Native is back on the table. So it brought a bit of turmoil into my plan. But thankfully, I wasn't convincing my team to use Flutter because it's a replacement for React Native, but I really thought that it's better than React Native and it would work better. So thankfully, after 3 months of convincing, I got green light to start using Flutter in my project. But Flutter isn't a silver bullet. It's not all fit solution. There are some cases when you shouldn't be using Flutter. In the morning, you heard about a couple of them from Miriam, and I have also 2 of them. For example, if you have a web team only available, you don't have any mobile developers, but they already know React.js. To learn React Native when you already know React.js is super fast, and also you would be able to deliver a quite OK application in really rapid speed. So when you don't have mobile developers available, you might consider using React Native. Another thing is when you are targeting a small market in like countries where the bandwidth of network is not so high, and you want to keep the application as small as possible, or even an instant application. With Flutter, at least currently, it's not possible because the minimum size of Flutter application is about 6 megabytes. And that's way too much for an instant app. But if those are not the cases for you, and you would still like to try out Flutter, you can start convincing people to use it. But do it slowly. Don't rush it. Gently poke them and suggest it. And there are different ways to convince different people at your team. First, I would talk about designers, because in my opinion, they're easiest to convince. One argument could be that there will be less arguing between us developers and the designers, Because how many times we got some mocks from the designers, we went happily to implement that. We thought that, OK, everything looks exactly the same as in the mocks, and then show them to the designers. So basically, I'm blind. I cannot see the difference between good UI and bad UI. So the designers would say, no, 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 no. This button is too big, font is too small, put some margin, go away. And I would need to reiterate it multiple times. And this pixel pushing is pretty annoying when doing in native native platforms. With Flutter, with its hot reload, you just do pair programming with the designer. You grab your computer, put it next to him or her, and do it within a few minutes. Miriam mentioned that in her project, the designers were working on the same code, but I wouldn't go so far. I'm not touching their designs, they're not touching my code. So let's divide this. Another argument would be show them the gallery app, and especially this animation example. Because when I showed this example to my designer, I got a quick response. Wow. OK. OK, that was annoying. Let's keep it like here. The second part is this can be a really good reference case what you can use in Flutter applications and what designers can design in the mocks. Because if you are doing a material design application or Cupertino components, it's really fast to just use whatever is in the gallery app. But if you want to have a bit more customized looking views, this is also easy because Flutter was made for customization. And with all those changes, you can create a beautiful design. You can add AMF factor to your application. You can make it sexy. And not only by using static designs, adding animation is also super fast and super nice. And animation adds another layer to the user experience. So that's why the designers really like animations. So currently, what would happen if, for example, a design would come to you and say, OK, we have like a really small task for you. Here's this animation of this weather application. It's really simple, some animations, some particle effects of the rain, some blurring effects. How hard can it be? Can you implement this? In the past, I would say, I think this is fine. I would be able to implement it, because everything that you can implement with Flutter, of course, you can do with native. The only difference is the time. I usually really like to do business logic instead of UI, because I can write first test, then write code, so do nice TDD, have it in a separate module, so it compiles fast, so I can do this iteration really quickly. But with animations, it's not so easy, and UI. You usually need to do the entire rebuild of the application. So for how many of you instant run worked really well? Anybody? Instant? No? No. Oh, yeah, one. Good. So this was in the past. Nowadays, when I would see this kind of designs, I would say, meh, yeah, sure, we can do it, no problem. Nowadays, you shouldn't be scared what the designers are giving to you. Nowadays, I encourage them to think of something as crazy as possible, but nice crazy, and leave the details of implementation to me. OK, so those are pretty good arguments for the designers. Next, we can go to QA, for testers. And contrary to popular belief, testers don't like finding bugs, because this is not their work. Their main task is to help the rest of the team deliver as good quality application as possible. So helping them and supporting them with this is really important. And there will be less testing, because there is common shared code base. I will give you an example. So when we were releasing Android application first, and then iOS, first the testers were testing the Android version. Of course, they found bugs here and there. We fixed it and shipped it. And then they went to testing the iOS application. And surprise, surprise, they didn't find any like Flutter bugs in the application because they already tested it on Android. But you need to be careful about this. In my experience, developing in Flutter is faster than in native. So you will be able to deliver more features, more stuff quicker. And this means that QA will need to like test more stuff as well. But while you are having some free time when you are doing Flutter, just automate stuff, like use the testing tools that Flutter has, and it has really good testing tools. So focus on automation. So this is about the QA. Let's go further. And things are getting a bit more hard. We developers love having discussion, and especially in topics that it's our main area of expertise. If we have too many discussions, this can change into arguments. And there's also a saying that arguing with a developer is like wrestling with a pig. After some time of wrestling, you noticed that the pig likes it. So you want to limit this arguing as much as possible by giving like good arguments why they should switch to Flutter. So one of the things that I did, I prepared a workshop to show them how nice is it to develop in Flutter. And this is really important because in recent years, developing on native got really nice with Kotlin and Swift. So that's why it's even more important to show that Flutter is even nicer experience. So my suggestion would be show them how to do hot reload. And furthermore, like I don't know if you know, because hot reload does not only work on your code, it works on entire framework on Flutter. If you are browsing through Flutter source code and you don't know what this method do, the straight coming from Flutter, just change it, hot reload, bam, you will see instant changes. And it's really nice to learn Flutter. But for this session, don't only invite mobile developers. Invite also backend developers and web developers. And while you're at it, you can invite QA and DevOps, because this is a really good time to answer all the questions that they have about Flutter. And you want to do it because you want as many people excited about Flutter as possible. Another fun thing about like Groupon, after this session, after we started doing Flutter, one backend developer joined our team, and he stopped doing backend development, and he is the second best Flutter developer in our team. So it's super nice. So we developers not only care about how fun stuff can be done, we also care if the stuff that the product has thought about is doable in this current platform, in this current framework. That's why create a showcase application that uses the most crucial APIs that you are using currently in your application. For example, in Groupon, we use Groupon is about vouchers, so we had to have some scanning, QR code scanning. Also, the push notifications are really important, like for every application. Next, I wanted to try if creating a nice architecture, in this case with Redux. I hope Brian was talking about Redux today. And the last thing, I wanted to show that the performance of Flutter is really nice with infinite lists. But when you are doing it, don't go overboard, because at some point I started to re-implement entire application. And like in a couple of months, probably it would be possible, but no, keep it as short as possible, just implement the key features of your application. And this showcase application is important because of the two cases. First, you can show it to everybody, like product, QA, developers, to show that those things are possible. Second of all, if you start doing Flutter, it will be a really nice reference case for other developers to learn how to do Flutter. But at this point, you won't be able to show all the extent of the power for Flutter. You will be new to Flutter, like I was. So you need a support to be able to show how amazing Flutter can be. And if you haven't seen this channel, also Miriam mentioned it, in the Flutter channel, the guy, Matt, is implementing amazing design within about 2 hours. And this is mind-blowing. For example, the weather application that you've seen on the previous slides was one of his creation. So it's pretty nice. And he created it within 2 hours. OK, so those are nice arguments for developers. And my developers said, OK, we can try it out. OK, but you know what comes now. Now the things are getting really hard. It's always hard to convince managers to any technical thing. And rightfully so. Because managers are responsible in front of stakeholders for delivering a really nice application. And at this point, you have to have rock-solid arguments to do so. Because if some high-level manager says no to Flutter, that probably will mean no. One of the key arguments, which is probably obvious for us, is there will be team merge. Not only you will be merging developers, because they will be working on the common code base, you will be merging testers, because you don't need to have so many dedicated per platform. You will be merging designers, because hopefully you will try to make a beautiful, customized designs, rather than only Android and only iOS. And also, managers won't need to think too much about feature parity, because feature parity is built in. Another fun fact, after I implemented one feature in Flutter, like on Android, and showed it to one of my manager, he asked, OK, so this also is implemented on iOS? And I respond, yes, that's the case with cross-platform solution. And I had to repeat it multiple times to multiple people. So this is apparently not so obvious. But really, you will need help to convince managers. And because nobody is a prophet in their own village. So you are not the expert in Flutter. So you will need to ask other people. And the Flutter community is really amazing. For example, in my case, I reached out to Eugenio Marletti and Seth Ladd, and they really helped me to convince my managers to Flutter. And thanks to them, we are doing Flutter. And we need help from our community because of the reference cases, or closely lack of them. There are already big applications in Flutter, like Alibaba or Google AdWords. But the number of them is still growing, but it's not as amazing as we would like to have. And managers love showcases. They want to know how many big application makers are having Flutter. But there is one showcase that you shouldn't be mentioning to managers, at least not yet. Don't mention about Fuchsia. Fuchsia is Google's new operating system that they're working on. And it's internally using Flutter. So if Fuchsia is released, that's really amazing for all the Flutter developers, because they are ready to create amazing application the day Fuchsia is announced. But the problem with big operating system is it's really hard to create them. And furthermore, what is even harder, to get adoption from the users. We've seen multiple of mobile platforms that died out because there were no users. And lastly, the most important thing that I think that managers care about is damage mitigation. They want to have an abort button. Whenever some developers want to start rewriting entire application from scratch in any technology, manager says no, because if this thing won't work, there will be like months of developer work wasted. So that's why we need to think about the best way to lose as little time as possible if Flutter fails. So don't start rewriting your entire application in Flutter if you already have one. Try to integrate Flutter into your current application and deliver one small feature. Test it if it works, and then you can continue, like adding more features. And at some point, you can refactor this one piece of your code, this one feature that is such a spaghetti code, and remake it with Flutter. So it's way better, because this approach covers the manager's back. So I'm almost finishing, so I have few suggestions for you. First, be passionate about Flutter, because passion is contagious. Being crazy about stuff is not. Another thing, you might be thinking, okay, Flutter is a pretty cool thing, but I'm not capable of convincing my team to it. There is probably somebody else in my team to do it. But you are sitting here. You already saw other talks about Flutter. You know more or less how to do simple things in Flutter. It might be possible that you are the most knowledgeable person about Flutter in your company. So if you won't probably convince your team to Flutter, you won't be using Flutter. And last thing, you might be afraid because you don't know if Flutter will succeed. And that's true, because predicting future is really hard. Predicting future is really hard because so many things already have failed. So help us, help Flutter developers start using Flutter, start advocating for Flutter, and don't predict future. Let's make it. So with this done, so thank you. If you have any questions or about like convincing or about Flutter, I'm super happy to answer those. So thank you. Oh, yeah.
It's okay, go ahead. Yeah, you have 2 microphones over there, and we have 15 minutes for questions.
So probably a very obvious question. You mentioned at the beginning some animations, some fancy animations. I have a certain level of doubt that you could do like all the native animations at the same speed and at the same, I don't know, performance. Plus, there are, how can I call them, certain components as well that, say for instance, they're specific to operating systems, like Apple Music, say for instance, that Bubbles animation thing that is only on their platforms. And
so
the question is about how can you have platform-specific components? Do you have to write like custom per platform code, or?
So, like for example, one custom component would be like for Android there is this discovery feature, like these pausing things. It's not built into Flutter, but for example, this guy like wrote it within like 45 minutes. So. There will be like libraries to deliver you those custom animation, but they are also really easy to write. So like really, animation creation nowadays, it's not the same thing as we are used to for Android or iOS. So did it answer your question? So usually you will need to write anything specific, but doing so, it's super fast. Good. Thank you.
Hi, Tomek. Great talk. Thank you. Interested to know how you convinced your iOS colleagues. So was it more difficult to convince your iOS colleagues than your Android colleagues, or were they more open-minded than my iOS colleagues?
So, like by definition, like Android are easier to convince because this is Google's thing. So it was easier. Okay. But iOS wasn't so hard. Like showing them how I program on daily basis, how amazing the hot reload is, that I don't need to test on different devices because, for example, feature parity. When I started implementing on Android, after 1 month, I was like, okay, maybe I should check out how it looks on iOS, because like React Native, definitely you have to test on both platforms. I ran it on the simulator on iOS. Everything was working just fine. So to show them how nice working with Flutter is, because it's really nice. So other than that, it wasn't so hard.
Maybe we need to swap colleagues. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello. So you was talking about integrating Flutter parts of the application to the existing application. So I was wondering, did you do that in your application? How hard it was, or it was possible at all?
So yeah, I did it. If you are starting a brand new application, with Flutter, there are no traction, everything will go smoothly. With integrating, it's a bit more massaging. You need to massage a bit your Gradle builds. I need to use because currently before we have two repositories: iOS repository and Android repository. And Flutter project looks like this. It has Android folder, iOS folder, and lib folder, which has the Dart code. So I had to somehow put those two repositories under those folders. So now we are using Git submodules to do it. And it took me, with an investigation, total amount of time, about 4 days to include Flutter into our Android version. Include Flutter into our Android version. On iOS, it took longer because, everybody knows that they have struggles with their build system, and poor guys. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
You say you've implemented features in your current app. How many? Are you still growing that, or how do you decide if you say, okay, we're going to use this, we're going to go full force, or are you going to keep it hybrid?
So actually, Android was released last Thursday, and iOS was released yesterday. So we need to now, I think today, when I am away, they will need to switch Firebase flag, so the merchant will, limited number of merchants will see that, and then we will see how it goes. If it goes well, we have already ideas to start replacing parts of our application with Flutter. But we are going piece by piece. And if something explodes now, we are able to revert back, and we won't lose so much time. Okay. Any other? Okay. Yes. Sorry. Again, this is a merchant application. Unless you are a merchant, and how many Groupon merchants here? If you are, you will see only US, because this feature is only available for US merchant. So, after the talk, I can show you how it looks like, but on a staging environment. But normal users won't yet see it. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I tried to use Flutter and I had problems with hot reload. So basically when I do changes in the Flutter code, it works fine. But then when I do changes in the Android native code, so I use it both at the same time, then the hot reload doesn't work correctly. And I need to stop and rerun the app to see the changes. Is there any solution, or
So
something?
native code doesn't change. If you are changing anything in iOS code, like Swift or Kotlin Android, there is no magic. It won't deploy automatically. Only Flutter code will be deployed. So you need to rebuild it and run again.
So it's difficult to work at the same time with Flutter and native?
No. It's basically, if you are doing something in native, you need to deploy it in a normal way. If you are using Flutter, you will have instant hot reloads.
Yeah, but my idea is that when I work on native, I have the instant run, if it works correctly, of course, and I don't need to do the stop to run the app and to deploy the new changes.
So I don't know. So if you are using instant run, I haven't used for a while already instant run. So like still, if you are doing native, you won't have a hot reload, like only.
Okay.
But we can talk later. Maybe I don't understand like exactly your case.
Thank you.
Okay. And anything else? Okay, so I'm available. You can always harass me. So just I will be around. So please try out Flutter and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.